Don't forget to like and subscribe. Story 1: The Abandoned Workshop. Back when I was in my early 20s, my small friend circle consisted mainly of me, Tyler, and Marcus. Our adventures were simple, days spent wandering the dense oak forest near our little town, talking about life, dreams, and the odd mysteries hidden in nature. One warm summer evening, as the golden light was slowly fading, Tyler swung by my apartment with a spark of excitement in his eyes. "Hey, you won't believe what I heard," he said, dropping his bag by the door. One of my friends mentioned a creepy abandoned building off a hidden trail in the woods. He barely got close, but he swears it's real. Curiosity instantly took hold. I asked, "What's it called?" Tyler only shrugged, saying his friend didn't even dare to name it. We exchanged an excited glance and quickly called Marcus, who was equally pumped. It was around 6 p.m., with the sun promising to dip completely by 8 p.m., perfect for an adventure that thrived on the edge of darkness. We gathered the basics: a couple of sturdy flashlights, a few granola bars, and a thermos of coffee. After picking up Marcus at his apartment, I parked our car next to a local corner store, a mere 2-minute walk from the forest's edge. The plan was simple: follow the half-mile trail that led to a scenic lookout, then continue a few more minutes into the dense forest to find the abandoned building. The trailhead was buzzing with a few other hikers heading back, but that only made the secret seem more exclusive. As we walked, the conversation was light at first, filled with memories of past escapades and playful teasing about our impending bravery. Yet, as the forest canopy grew denser and the light faded, an undercurrent of apprehension crept in. At the lookout, where the golden hues of dusk mingled with the emerging shadows, we paused to let our eyes adjust. One of the flashlights continued its beam into the trees, hinting at something further in. Suddenly, a rustle in a nearby bush startled us. The beam flicked toward the noise, a quick, jerky movement of leaves that made our hearts skip a beat. Tyler joked nervously, "Probably just a squirrel," but his shaky tone betrayed his unease. Beyond the rustling, we could make out the silhouette of an old structure. Our excitement surged anew as we approached. The building was peculiar. It resembled a small workshop, perhaps once a carpentry studio, standing oddly alone amid the forest. The wooden front door lay broken on the ground, as if it had been kicked aside in a hurried escape long ago. Inside, the first thing that hit us was an overwhelming stench, a mixture of decay and something indefinably foul. The open room housed a large, time-worn workbench cluttered with rusted tools and heaps of discarded junk. Marcus hesitated at the threshold of a dark hallway leading to 2 more rooms. As we inched closer, the odor intensified so dramatically that Tyler clutched his shirt over his nose. "Guys, this is too much. We need to leave," he whispered, though his eyes still shone with nervous curiosity. Ignoring the warning, I shined my flashlight on one of the closed doors and took a cautious step forward. Suddenly, Marcus let out a blood-curdling scream and bolted back into the hallway, his eyes wide with terror. Moments later, a series of heavy thuds began reverberating from behind the third, still closed door. Fear replaced our earlier excitement. "Did you see that?" Tyler gasped, his voice quivering. "There was a body. I swear there was a body lying there." Marcus was visibly shaken, unable to look at us, and I felt a chill run down my spine as I insisted, "We need to get out, now. And I think someone might still be inside." We sprinted out of that nightmare of a building and ran until our lungs burned, guided only by the distant promise of the road. Once back in the car, with our hearts pounding and hands still trembling, I drove straight to the local police station. The officer taking our statement seemed annoyed, as if chastising us for our recklessness. "You kids shouldn't be out roaming these woods at night," he grumbled while scribbling notes. Still, he dispatched a team to investigate our report. We waited outside in silence for over 2 hours until we were called in for further questioning. The officers eventually found traces of blood and evidence that something sinister had occurred at the site. Weeks later, they recovered a poorly concealed body a few hundred feet from the building, a grim confirmation that our night had brushed with real danger. Even today, the memory of that evening haunts me. It's a reminder that curiosity can sometimes lead you dangerously close to secrets meant to stay buried. Story 2: The Forgotten Townhouse. I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, where abandoned buildings were as common as the changing seasons. As a middle schooler, my best friend Ethan and I were fascinated by these forgotten relics of the past. While other kids were scared of them, we saw them as gateways to adventure, places that whispered stories of the lives once lived there. Every weekend, Ethan and I explored a new decaying structure. We would don our makeshift explorer gear and spend hours speculating about what mysteries lay hidden behind boarded-up windows and rusted doors. One overcast afternoon, we decided to drive down an overgrown, cracked cement road that led to several abandoned houses we'd already visited. Today, we wanted something different, a fresh, unexplored site that promised new thrills. At first, the familiar cluster of dilapidated homes greeted us as usual. But soon we noticed that we'd been walking for nearly 5 minutes without another building in sight. The paved path ended abruptly, replaced by a narrow gravel trail that wound its way through a thicket of towering pines. Excited and a little nervous, we pressed on, convinced that the trail must lead to something extraordinary. After another 5 minutes of trudging through the undergrowth, we reached a building that defied expectation, a random townhouse nestled in a secluded, wooded clearing. All the windows were securely boarded up, and the front door was tightly closed, yet the garage door hung open at an odd angle, leaving just enough space to crawl through. We exchanged a glance filled with both excitement and apprehension. "Do you think it's safe?" Ethan asked in a hushed tone, his eyes darting around as if expecting someone, or something, to jump out. I reassured him, "We'll be fine. It's just a building." We knocked on the metal garage door, testing its sturdiness, and then, after a moment of shared determination, knelt down and squeezed through the narrow opening. Inside the garage, the scene was disappointingly mundane. Scattered garbage, a layer of dust, and silence. But the real mystery lay behind the door leading into the house. I pushed against it, turning the old knob with effort until it finally creaked open. Immediately, a massive, ancient dresser loomed in front of us, blocking the way into what appeared to be the kitchen. Undeterred, Ethan and I clambered over the piece of furniture and entered the room. The interior of the house was surprisingly well preserved. Dusty wooden floors bore fresh footprints, and the layout was neat, as if someone had lived here until very recently. As we moved down a narrow hallway toward the living room, a soft thump echoed from somewhere in the distance. We froze, hearts pounding in unison. Silence followed, broken only by the creak of old floorboards under our tentative steps. Determined to investigate, we made our way toward the front door. Halfway there, an ear-piercing scraping sound shattered the silence, followed by a tremendous crashing bang from the garage. I flung the door open, and we both bolted out into the fading light. Only once we were safely outside did the full impact of what we'd experienced sink in. Panting and wide-eyed, Ethan tried to rationalize. Maybe it was just the wind, but I wasn't convinced. I couldn't shake the thought that someone, or something, had deliberately set a trap to scare us away. We never returned to that house, and from that day forward, we stuck to exploring sites closer to home. The memory of that eerie encounter still sends shivers down my spine, a stark reminder of the dangers hidden in abandoned places. Story 3: The Haunted Hideout. Lucas and I had always been escape artists in our own right, finding secret spots to hide from the pressures of school and the watchful eyes of adults. In our younger days, we'd claim a quiet corner of the schoolyard or a forgotten skate park as our sanctuary. When we built a treehouse in Lucas's backyard, it became our ultimate hideout, a private world of comic books, whispered plans, and dreams of freedom. However, as the years passed, Lucas's little brother began joining us, and before long, our treehouse was overrun with his friends. His mother insisted we were too old for such childish retreats, so reluctantly, we began searching for a new sanctuary. One crisp fall afternoon, Lucas and I packed our backpacks with a few essentials, flashlights, notebooks, and some snacks, and ventured into the woods farther than we ever had before. Our goal was to find a new hideout that would match the magic of our old treehouse. We trudged along a barely visible trail, the forest thick with the rustling of leaves and the sound of distant bird calls. The deeper we went, the more the familiar transformed into the unknown. As twilight began to cast long shadows, we stumbled upon a modest stone building. It was almost square, with a creaking metal door, a corrugated iron roof, and no windows to speak of. The building had an eerie stillness about it that both thrilled and unnerved us. The next day, determined to claim the spot as our new hideout, we returned with blankets, cushions, and even a battery-operated lamp. We spent hours cleaning out the dust and debris, setting up a cozy corner inside. We hung a garland of fairy lights along the ceiling and decorated the walls with posters we had brought from home. The steady patter of rain on the iron roof later that evening created an oddly comforting soundtrack as we settled in for our new secret hideout. Our new spot quickly became our refuge. We'd spend lazy afternoons there, reading comics and scribbling down our wild ideas, the outside world fading into insignificance as the rain drummed steadily overhead. But one gloomy evening, while we were deeply engrossed in our latest adventure, an unsettling silence fell over the hideout. The door creaked open unexpectedly, sending a shiver down my spine. Lucas stopped humming and stared at the darkened entrance, his eyes wide with fear. Then, faint footsteps could be heard circling the back of the building, followed by a sudden, violent slam of the door. The wind and rain burst in as if a storm had been unleashed just for us. Lucas screamed, and I found myself frozen, unable to move as we watched the chaos unfold outside. Minutes later, the noise subsided, leaving us in a tense, eerie silence. Finally, gathering every ounce of courage, I closed the door and whispered, "Let's get out of here." We left the hideout that night, hearts pounding and soaked to the bone. Though we eventually returned, the memory of that inexplicable intrusion haunted us. We made a pact never to visit after dark again, and even now, the thought of that silent, haunted hideout sends a chill down my spine. It remains a bittersweet reminder of our childhood, of both the wonder and the terror that sometimes lie hidden in the dark.